Come join us at the Real Truth About Health free 17-day live online conference. Join over 80 of the world's top medical doctors, naturopathic doctors, nutritionists, scientists, dietitians, researchers, and authors who will share with you the unbiased, accurate, scientifically proven truth about health, nutrition, the food system, the medical system, and the environment. 85 individual lectures, 32 panels. All are 100% free. Live question and answers for the last half hour of every session, where you get to directly ask the speaker your questions. Please meet the 2023 conference speakers listed here in alphabetical order.
I am not a believer in any of the so-called name diets, vegan, ketogenic, paleo, all of those. I believe the diet should be organic, plant-based, antioxidant-rich, anti-inflammatory, whole foods.
It boggles my mind every time I present this. The sponsor will write up, they're asking the academic medical center contracting people if they would agree to let the sponsor write up the results of the clinical trial for publication.
But to me, it's probably the single biggest benefit of a healthy plant-based diet is that it's low in saturated fat. And unfortunately, what we see now is that the label vegan or plant-based can now be used to cover foods that contain palm oil and coconut oil.
Yes, low-carb diets lead to losing weight and an initial dip in your blood sugar levels, but they absolutely crush your insulin sensitivity and lead to a spike in insulin resistance.
So basically, you can think of it this way. You're simply creating a ticking time bomb. The first reason to eat a plant-based diet is that you're simply eating a way that's more similar to how our human ancestors evolved. Most people think that our human ancestors were hunter-gatherers, but it turns out that they were likely gatherer-hunters.
We've got ginkgo, gotu kola, periwinkle, ashwagandha, Chinese ginseng, schizandra berry, skullcap, and water hyssop.
My favorite source of omega-3 is green leafy vegetables. You might think, what? They don't have much fat in them. And you're right, they don't. But if you're a person who eats a lot of broccoli and the whole range of green leafy vegetables, about 7 or 8% of their calories come from fat. And the proportion is very high in omega-3.
Over 30 years of satellite monitoring, we witnessed 1,000 hectares of forest destroyed each day. That's nearly 2 acres of forest cleared every minute for beef and sheep production.
What I've done is delve into the scientific literature and found peer-reviewed studies that have shown ways that are safe to help people keep their memory, to keep their brains intact.
Humans, really, we're the most dangerous animal on this planet right now. And we're the most deadly animal on this planet, and the fish have nowhere to hide.
So the takeaways from all this, number one, cognitive decline is reversible for most patients with MCI or early dementia.
What do we see in all these lines? All these lines are doing the same thing. They're regression lines. They come right back near the zero, which tends to say, as soon as we start eating some of these things that are all animal protein, we start to see disease risk.
Well, there's 64 times more antioxidants in plant foods than in animal foods. And as Dr. Will Bolsowitz points out, that 1/64 comes from the plants the animals ate.
In my 40s, the photo on the left, I was close to 200 pounds. The photo on the right was taken when I was 60 years old.
Raise a child on junk food and nobody bats an eye. Raise a vegan child and everybody loses their mind. Isn't that true?
Broccoli sprouts, for instance, we knew the anti-cancer effect. How many of you knew about this effect? Sulforaphane. It regulates 2 enzymes, protect against any cancer throughout the body, any cancer. And by the way, when you consume this before getting cancer, guess what? It's the most effective anti-cancer prevention ever looked at in biology.
At this point, we know in diabetes, the fat from fish destroys the beta cells of the pancreas. For diabetics, just stay away from fish. Research in Europe shows that people who have fish 2 to 3 times a week have more diabetes.
Earth and all life on it are being saturated with man-made chemicals in an event unlike anything which has occurred in all 4 billion years of our planet's story.
When the plaque in your mouth is in this healthy state, it doesn't smell, it's not sticky or smelly, it doesn't cause gum disease. But when you disturb it, lead to gum disease, Alzheimer's disease, 7 different types of cancers.
In the general population, 12 to 14% of Americans have diabetes. And this is the real shocker. 37 to 38% have prediabetes. And this is, of course, adults.
which means 49 to 52% of American adults have either type 2 diabetes or prediabetes.
Even in the plant-based community, even under the most perfect plant-based diet, I would suggest to you that you need to know beyond that understanding of how do you adjust for your hormones, which will decline miserably just associated with aging.
Now the world's fastest growing brain disease. According to the Global Burden of Disease study, the number of people with Parkinson's disease worldwide has more than doubled in just the span of 25 years, growing faster than can be accounted by aging alone.
I just think we have such a disconnect between the food that we eat and our health. And you know, this is really so, it may not be easy, but it's really so simple.
That
right?
is really something that we love to say because it's true. It's a very simple thing to do, but not always easy.
We are now getting 16% of the levels of omega-3s that we got in 1850, and in 1850 the levels were already too low. It is the most widespread essential nutrient deficiency of our time.
Nothing is more woo-woo than a seed that can look like a pebble, right? That could sit on a countertop, sit in a refrigerator, sit in a pyramid for 1,200 years. And then under the right circumstances, this seed will germinate, AKA sprout, and turn into life.
We don't want simple carbs because they lead us into the sugar cycle. You eat something sweet, blood sugar goes up. That's a 911. That's an emergency number for the pancreas.
The studies show that when people switch from white rice or white flour and they move to whole grains, their risk of developing diabetes or reversing diabetes improves by 30%. But when people switch from white flour or white rice to beans, their risk go down by 60%. It's much more effective to go to more beans and less grains even when you have diabetes.
Health food, I don't think is the way to get healthy. I think we really should be talking about healthy foods. And healthy foods are fruits and vegetables and grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, a whole plant food, SOS-free diet. SOS, of course, is the international symbol of danger, and it also stands for salt, oil, and sugar.
I have been able to help thousands of people all over the world with recovery, not just from lupus, but with so many illnesses.
Decades ago, Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues published evidence in one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world that our leading cause of death could be reversed with diet and lifestyle changes alone, yet hardly anything changed. Even now, hundreds of thousands of Americans continue to needlessly die each year from what we learned decades ago was a reversible condition.
Kidney disease is a devastating illness. It affects millions of people across the world and can lead to things like dialysis, and the risk of dying from it is quite dramatic. But are there things right now that you could be doing that can make a big difference in lowering your risk of developing kidney disease?
There's a rampant epidemic of vitamin B12 deficiency to the point that most people need to supplement for B12 regardless. And where does B12 come from? It doesn't come from plants or animals. It comes from dirt. It comes from bacteria in the dirt.
Here's what we can say. If you're comparing it just to a 3-day fast that you're doing every 6 months, versus, you're doing this 16-hour fasting every single day, I would bet my house that the 16-hour fasting every single day is far better for you.
A plant-based diet is the only diet that we've ever seen that actually reverses advanced stage cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes.
We want to trust that what is in the grocery store is safe. And the shocking reality is that in many cases, it's not.
And that's where I found out that my problems were all related to mercury. Mercury that came from dental fillings that I've been drilling out for all of those years. I had no idea that this could even be a problem. No idea that this could make me sick.
Carnism is the invisible belief system that conditions us to eat certain animals and to never question why we eat some animals but not others.
As some studies looked at the issue of intake of fish in questionnaires and populations and the development of type 2 diabetes, there was a relationship. Higher fish intake, higher diabetes intake. There's the same relationship for red meat. Higher red meat intake, higher rate of diabetes. Certainly for processed red meat. Higher bacon intake, higher rate of diabetes.
Most everybody with every meal, there's a piece of animal muscle in some form in the center of the plate. If it's not there, you get upset at the waiter or the waitress and say, where's my protein? But so most people are eating a piece of animal muscle 2-3 times a day. Let's look at what that really adds to the bloodstream after every meat-based meal.
One of the things that really surprises me these days, and I don't think it's going to surprise you, but I'm still surprised by this, is I have a lot of patients who come to me for a second opinion because they say, well, my oncologist says diet doesn't matter.
Now, supplements to avoid, iron, copper, and calcium, what I call the toxic nutrients.
So over the last few years, I have had a remarkable transformation myself from being a huge advocate of a paleo diet during my medical residency back in 2012 to now going the complete opposite direction and being a passionate whole food plant-based advocate since 2014.
As you know, heart disease has been the #1 cause of death in America for more than 100 consecutive years since 1919. In 1918, it was a Spanish flu. Every year since then, heart disease, even last year, COVID was #3. So heart disease is the #1 killer, about 500,000 to 600,000 Americans every year.
That I call memory engineering. It's the first published process in history on how to re-engineer memories that are causing problems. Took me 30 years.
Most of the corn and most of the soy in the U.S. is now genetically engineered to tolerate Roundup, glyphosate, and it's no longer working.
People love to hear good news about their bad habits. So whenever it comes out how wonderful chocolate is for you, everybody wants to read that article. You know, the articles that are out that say eggs prevent heart disease. Everybody wants to read that article. People love to hear good news about their bad habits.
And I know if you talk to a medical doctor, the medical doctor will say it doesn't matter whether you breathe through your nose or through your mouth. Well, it's unfortunate. He's just after spending 8 years at university and he doesn't know what his nose is for. Your mouth has no purpose whatsoever when it comes to breathing.
One of the diagnostic tools of MS to say you have MS is like plaques on the brain on MRI. He didn't have one round of fetal stem cells. He had a few rounds over the course of many years. And every time, after like the second or third round, he no longer needed his canes. He's walking around like normal.
There simply is no other industry as destructive to our planet as animal agriculture. Unless we make some big changes, our planet is headed for catastrophe.
We are out here to stand up for the trillions of innocent beings suffering in the food, clothing, animal testing, and entertainment industries.
We see our patients chronically get better over time. We have angiographic data of coronary artery disease improving, and lots of other data of our patients getting better and medications being reduced. And I've just not seen those publications with the keto diet.
Yes, I want you to have healthy kidneys if you haven't progressed to kidney failure yet. But even if you're on dialysis, you are still a person. You still have other organs. You still have other things about your body and wonderful things about you that I want you to take very good care of. More plants are better for everyone. Just make sure you're eating the right plants.
The purpose of this website is to provide resources and help educate you in the possibility that Alzheimer's and dementia are both preventable and even in some cases reversible.
One of the great myths out there is that natural approaches aren't scientific, and the fact of the matter is, for most common health conditions, we can build a stronger scientific rationale for the use of these natural approaches than we can for many of the drugs that are in use.
Another very recent study that just came out here in 2021 looked at 521,120 people, followed for an average 16 years. And they found that, again, each additional half egg per day increased the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease, cancer, or all causes by 7% each.
Sam here is wearing a pair of tennis shoes, and when he puts it on, turns it on, you can see that he's not grounded. But because I am grounded, I am barefoot on the earth. When I touch Sam, he is naturally grounded.
Prevention truly is the best, like you did with your daughter. I had a patient just some time ago, and she had been to 3 other dentists. And one said she needed 5 root canals, another one said she needed 9 root canals. And I restored all their teeth. No root canals. It's been more than a year.
The average home that's built today has anywhere between 8,000 and 15,000 different chemicals in it, just from the building process.
Now, chronic disease and cancers are preventable in general, about 97%. So when we look at genes right here at the bottom right hand in the little green here, it's about 2 to 3% of disease is actually genetically related.
Been working with magnetic field therapy for about 30 years and have found that it does just amazing things.
The UK government sponsored a study on GM soy, the only human feeding study ever conducted. Let that sink in. It showed that the gene inserted into soybeans spontaneously transferred out of food and into the DNA of gut bacteria.
If your cholesterol is 220, you have a 25% increased risk. Higher is worse. 250, 50% increased risk. So if you take a look at somebody's plasma cholesterol in midlife, you get a pretty good idea of what their Alzheimer's disease risk is going to be. And I hate to tell you this, but taking statin drugs doesn't fix it.
So we have some risk factors that we all know: high cholesterol, high blood pressure, smoking, certain risk factors that everybody's aware of. But what we're not talking about is that 50% of the equation is inflammation. Inflammation, which is measured by certain markers in the blood, but also inflammation which is triggered by lifestyle choices.
That means that dangerous climate change is coming, and it is going to get a lot worse for a long time to come.
The number of kids who are hospitalized for food allergies has increased 5-fold in the last generation. The number of people who are obese keeps going up. Now 70% of the entire US population is overweight or obese. We are on course that within the next 10 years, 50% of us may be obese or morbidly obese.
But it's morphed into funding most of the FDA's section that approves new drugs. The numbers I've seen say as much as 70% of the salaries of the people who approve drugs now come from pharmaceutical industry. Not the American people, not Congress, but the pharmaceutical industry.
I was with my family, my entire nuclear family in Linda. Here I was, 28 years young when I was diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, an incurable cancer, an incurable leukemia.
Almost 30 years ago, researchers discovered that in order for a cancer to grow, it requires a steadily increasing blood supply delivered via blood vessels. So by cooling inflammation, it may be possible to also turn off the angiogenesis that feeds cancer growth.
Breast cancer in women who place the cell phone in their bras, which many people do, has been linked to wireless radiation.
People aren't as aware that glyphosate is also used as a desiccant right before harvest on a number of other crops that are not GMO crops. So when you see the label non-GMO, it's not good enough. And this includes some basic foods, also wheat and oats and barley and rye, sugarcane, all the legumes, beans, lentils, peas, sunflowers, pulses, chickpeas.
On the right side is after. And the intervention here was 32 months of a plant-based diet. And this patient did not take cholesterol medications.
Here are the 28 different conditions that people reported getting better from in the lectures that I went to, put them into the survey, and here's the percentage of people that reported getting better from those conditions by switching to non-GMO.
Normal cells have a pre-programmed number of cell divisions before they are supposed to die. Cancer cells do not have that. So that basically means that cancer cells are immortal. They will continue to grow and divide unless they are killed.
When we consume dairy, when we drink the milk from a cow, for example, we are actually being exposed to their estrogen, their progesterone, their other sex steroid hormones.
Hey, I'm Derek Treesize. I'm a Clean Machine sponsored athlete. I'm a pro natural men's physique competitor. So I've gotten my pro card as a vegan athlete, and I've been vegan for over 10 years.
So Chris, for those who don't know, why nutrition? Why did you decide to opt out of chemotherapy, radiation, and say nutrition is the way?
Well, I had this epiphany pretty early on in the cancer journey, and that was that the way I was living was killing me, right? And I realized, there's more to health and disease than just medical treatment. Medical treatment can be very helpful.
Please remove yourself from these waters. You're in violation of international conservation regulations. We're acting in accordance with the United Nations World Charter for Nature and implementing these regulations. You're in a whale sanctuary and you're assisting in illegal activity. Remove yourself from these waters immediately.
The causes of schizophrenia, the causes of depression, and really other disorders were due to chemical imbalances in the brain. And that's a story that tells you need to take your medication, and you need to take it forever, really, because you have to counterbalance this thing. And the tragedy is, it's not true.
You've been described as a medical medium since the age of 4.
I woke up one morning, heard a voice perfectly clear, and that voice tells me what's going inside the body. So what's happening? You know, are you sick? Is there a mysterious illness? And it comes nonstop like that.
Cardiovascular disease, leading cause of death around the world. But if you segregate it into low and middle income and high income countries, turns out that it's number one in all of the low and middle income countries, but not in the high income countries, except the United States of America. It's the only high income country where it hasn't fallen below the rate of cancer.
Mark your calendars, May 5th to May 21st, 2023, from 9 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Check out the Real Truth About Health website for our conference schedule. Sign up for free today at therealtruthabout.health.com.